Hi everyone, welcome back to the Stitch Sessions. Happy holidays, happy December. It's the first day of the final month of the year. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Karen. I love all things crochet and I adore having you guys come along on my crochet journey and checking out some of my crochet shenanigans. Today is the last installment in our crochet series for 2021, and that series has been Life's a Beach. So they've been all things beach related that we've created crochet projects for. Now you're probably thinking, well, where is the beach? Normally I start off with a beach location that I've been to, I've explored. Unfortunately, I just didn't have enough time to squeeze in one more beach location before things just turned chilly here. So I thought what I would do is just take you on a very quick little trip down memory lane to a fabulous beach I went to about 4 years ago in Italy. And for those of you who have not been to Italy, it should definitely be on your bucket list. Just the architecture, the topography of the land, it's gorgeous. Some of the beach photos that you're gonna see here are from a beach in a town called Termoli, and it's a larger town, maybe small city on the east coast of the country, and it faces the Adriatic Sea. And the water is just absolutely divine. It's warm like soup. The weather's fairly fantastic, although you can see in some of these photos, it can be fairly windy on that side, but it was just fabulous. And not only is it a great beach town, but there's so much in the way of history and historical significance to see, like structures and ruins and architecture. A lot of Greek architectural influence here, so you really can't go wrong. You can hang out at the beach, you can check out some of the sites. It was just such a fabulous fun trip. And in fact, because it was so windy, it would be the perfect spot to use something like a throw, which is this month's project. So for our final installment, we are going to be making this loops and arrows throw. And I call it the loops and arrows because what we're doing here is we're actually creating an arrow motif. And I'm not sure if you can see it here, but you've got the points on the bottom and points on the top. And it's perfect for the month of December because you can make this as a fabulous winter throw. You can make it a full-size blanket. So I talk about in the tutorial how you can make it larger if you would like. Or for those of you that love going to the cottage and going right till the end of the good weather, we all know that especially in Ontario, can get pretty chilly in the evenings. So what I loved about working on this project, of course I love all of my projects, is the fact that we used the linked double crochet stitch. And it's such an elegant stitch because it creates a very subtle texture, but it also creates a denser fabric. So it's perfect for staving off the chills a little bit in the evening, and I just loved working with it. Now I did it in these contrasting colors, and I used the Caron cotton cakes, which are fantastic for summer type projects. And you certainly don't have to do them in more than one color. In fact, I talk about in the tutorial how you can use a solid color and it'll look just gorgeous. In fact, I'm really thinking about making another one in a completely solid color. So now, if you are curious about any of the other projects that we created in this series, I will be sure to leave a link to the full playlist down below. But stay tuned because, as always, we are going to do a year in review of all the projects we've done for 2021 in our crochet series. As well, we will be giving you a little sneak peek of our crochet series for 2022, because I know some of you are already thinking about what is it going to be. I think you'll be very pleased with the theme for next year. The other thing I love about this project for the month of December is it's a great project to work on over the holidays. We always have a little bit of funny downtime. There's that period of time between Christmas and New Year's. Sometimes you're working, sometimes you're not, spending a lot of time with family, a lot of movie nights. So this is a great project to keep your hands busy while you're watching some Netflix movies, catching up on your shows. I also like listening to podcasts. One of my other favorite things to do is listen and crochet. It's so meditative for me. And by the way, leave me a comment in the comment box down below and let me know what your favorite podcasts are to listen to if you're a podcast listener. I like checking out what else is out there. Right now I've got 2 favorites on my list. I have Dear Chelsea, which is the Chelsea Handler podcast, and she's super funny, but really tackles some interesting issues. People call in asking her for advice. So she's got a really funny twist, but also very poignant. I was pleasantly surprised. The other podcast, which is actually very new to me, it's called Dear Pod. And it's a friend duo, a guy and a girl, and what they do is they read old letters that were written into Dear Abby and Ann Landers. So they're usually from the 60s and the 70s, so they're really super interesting what issues people had back then. Not that they're that much different from now, but they also read Ann Landers' responses and Dear Abby's responses, and then they talk about how they themselves would answer, give the advice, and such funny content, this podcast, and really a lot of fun to listen to, and it's just perfect for something like you're crocheting and you want something fun and mindless. So those are my top 2, but like I said, drop me your favorite podcasts in the comment box. I'm always looking for new stuff to listen to. So if you have any questions whatsoever, make sure to pop them in a comment box down below, as well as if you have any requests or suggestions on future projects. Some of you have actually left me comments. You've even emailed me directly, which I really appreciate. And at the end of the day, it's all about creating something fun that's fun for me, but fun for you guys as well. So make sure that if you like any of the projects that you see along the way, to give me a thumbs up, because that helps me kind of know I'm on the right track with the types of things that you want to work on. So let's get all of our materials together and let's get stitching up our loops and arrows throw. Okay, so here's what you're going to need for your beach blanket. The yarn that I used was the Caron Cotton Cakes by Yarnspirations, and I absolutely adore working with this yarn. Those of you that remember the crisscross cardigan, put a link for that in the description box down below. That is the yarn that I used for that project, and I just love working with it. It is 60% cotton and 40% acrylic. It comes in a 250 gram cake and has 530 yards or 485 meters of yarn. So this is just divine. I love all their colorways. It was such a hard decision. Every single colorway in their color palette for this line, I absolutely adore. I just couldn't make up my mind. And in case you're wondering, this colorway is called Driftwood, which I thought was very appropriate for our beachy theme. I also ended up adding my accent color here. Now, the typical Caron Cotton Cakes, they have for some reason discontinued that line as soon as I bought the other 2 cakes in the Driftwood colorway. So they now have a line called Cotton Angel Cakes. And literally this happened within a couple of days. I must have bought the last few cakes in the original Cotton Cake series. So now they have Caron Cotton Angel Cakes, which actually is the same type of yarn, but they've got brand new colorways, also absolutely gorgeous. But this colorway here is called Sea Salt. And actually, this is very comparable to a colorway they used to have called Cream in the original Caron Cotton Cakes. I'm very happy with that. So I have 2 cakes of these as well. They are also 250 grams each, containing 530 yards or 485 meters. Okay, so it is the same fiber content. So I used an additional couple of cakes of this by Yarnspirations. And of course, as always, make sure you have a handy pair of scissors and a darning needle. Now this yarn, they do call, it is a medium 4-weight yarn, and they do call for a size 5mm hook. But as always, I like to keep my stitches nice and loose. So I am using a 6mm hook for this project, also known as a J or a size 10. Now, let's begin. Okay, so to begin, we're going to create our arrow motifs first. And so that's what I'm going to take you through to begin with. So you're going to grab your selected yarn and you're going to place a slip knot on your hook. And we need to create the length of our arrows. So I chained 101 chains. Now you can make your arrows slightly longer if you like, but if you want to follow along exactly with me, you're going to chain 101. And as always, just be really careful not to be too tight with your initial chain, and most especially in this project because we are going to be working in through this chain both on the top and the bottom side of your project. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet back up with you once you've got 101 chains. Okay, once you've done your 101 chains, you want to just make sure that they're all nice and consistent, nothing is bunching and nothing is twisted, so your work's going to look something like that. And now what we're going to do is we are going to find the second chain from your hook. Remember, the one on the hook never counts. 1 and 2. And into that second chain, we are going to place a single crochet stitch. So you'll pull up a loop and pull through 2. Okay, just like that. And that is what you're going to do into each and every single chain all the way down to the very end. Okay, so you're just going to insert your hook into the next one, pull up a loop, and pull through 2 like a regular single crochet. And don't worry that your stitches are probably stretching out a little bit. That's quite normal. If you're still a little bit newer to crochet, that's very, very normal for that to happen, but it'll all work itself out once the project grows. Okay, so go ahead and do that. 1 single crochet into each, and I'll meet back up with you when you have come right down to your last stitch. Okay, so once you have placed 1 single crochet into each stitch, your work is going to look a little something like this. So you can see the colors are changing already on my yarn. And what we're going to do now is we're going to work around the side and now along the bottom of our chain row. So what's going to happen is we are working our arrow in the round. So you've placed your last single crochet into the last chain here. What we're going to do is we are going to place 2 more single crochets into that same stitch. So I'm going to insert my hook, single crochet, and then 1 more time back into that same stitch and single crochet. And what this does is you can see how it's curving around. It allows us to curve around the bend, and now we're going to work along the bottom. Now before we do that, especially if you're a little bit newer to crochet, I would recommend placing a little marker in the second single crochet here. So remember, there's 3 stitches in that chain. So just to kind of help you remember where it is, because it will be important later on. So that's the last one we did. We want to place a little marker there. Okay, just like that. Just so that when we come back around to it, you'll know that's the stitch. So this stitch is going to be our corner stitch. It's going to represent our point. So this is the first point of our arrow. Okay, so now you would just continue on, and I'm going to work over my tail here, placing 1 single crochet into each stitch. So now we're working along the bottom. So that would be our next stitch there. And that's why I said earlier you didn't want to chain your initial chain too tightly. And so the next stitch is there, and so on. Okay, so you have it, that works just like that. So go ahead and do that. You're now going to work on the bottom side of your chain all the way to the end. And when you get back to your second last chain, I will meet back up with you here. So it's going to be a little tricky to see, but that's it right there. So that's the chain 1 right here, this little loop, and that was the first single crochet. So I'm going to meet back up with you once you have placed a single crochet in that very last stitch there, just before, sorry, that's the second last stitch there. So I'm going to meet you up. I'm going to meet up with you guys when you get to there, okay?
Okay, so this is my second last stitch here, so it's going to get a little bit tight in here. Okay, that's 99, and then 100 I'm going to put right in here. So where this single crochet is here, that's a single crochet, and that's the chain one. So the chain is right in there, so we've got to place our hook. That's going to be our 100th stitch along the bottom. Okay. And now we're going to place one more. So that chain one, we're not going to count as anything. We're going to place one more stitch in here, and that's going to be the center of our point on this end. So right away, so I don't mess it up, I'm going to place a stitch marker in that loop right there. Oops. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slip stitch to join at the top of this single crochet here. And now we're ready to begin round 2. So your round 1 will look like this. So now you've got stitches on both sides of that chain, and that creates basically like your center spine, so to speak. Okay? So now we're going on to round 2, and this is where we are going to use our linked double crochet stitch. Okay, now I like to start this by chaining 2. Some people will chain 3, I chain 2. Now what I'm going to do is I am now going to insert my hook into that first chain, not the one right next to the hook, but the one on the bottom here. So the first chain I did, I'm going to insert my hook. I'm going to pull up a loop. And now right where I slip stitched here, I am actually going to insert my hook into there. And I'm going to pull up another loop. Okay? So I have 3 loops on the hook, and now I'm going to pull through 2 and pull through 2. And this is how I'm going to begin all of my rounds for the very first stitch. So for me, I'm not really going to count that chain 2 as anything. It's just giving me a proper stitch to work into. So you'll notice that there's some front loops that come across the front there. And that loop in particular here is the loop we're going to continuously work into in this particular stitch. Okay, so we're basically going to link all of our stitches close together, and that's why it's called a linked double crochet. So now we're just going to continue doing 1 into each stitch, and this is how you're going to work the stitch from here on out. Instead of yarning over, what you're going to do is in that front bar there, you will just insert your hook through there, and you'll pull up a loop out of there. Then you will go into the very next stitch you want to work into, which is right there. You're going to insert your hook and pull up another loop so that you have 3 loops on your hook. You will then yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops, just like you would a regular double crochet. Now you're going to yarn over and pull through the other 2 loops. So what you should see now is that these loops are linked together. So you don't see the spacing between the stitches like you would in a typical double crochet. Okay, let's do that again. So I'm not going to yarn over. I'm going to go into that front bar there that you see going across, that vertical bar. Sorry, that's a horizontal bar, my apologies. And you're going to pull up a loop. So you have 2 loops. Now you'll go into the next stitch, insert your hook, and pull up another loop. So you have your 3 loops. You'll yarn over. You'll pull through the first 2. You'll yarn over and pull through the second 2. So again, you can see that they are sitting really snugly next to each other. And now these horizontal bars are playing quite prominently across the row here, the top part of our round. So I'm going to do it one more time. Insert down through that horizontal bar, pull up a loop, find your next stitch, insert your hook, pull up another loop. Now you'll yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the second 2. So now you can see with a few under our belt how they really sit nicely close together. And that is the stitch we're going to be using for our arrow. Okay, so that's what you're going to continue doing all the way around here until you get to your stitch marker. Remember, I had you guys mark that very tip stitch there. So I'll meet up with you guys when you reach there, and I'm going to tell you what we're going to do into that stitch. Okay, so here I am. I'm just about to hit that little stitch marker there. So I'm just doing my last linked double crochet into that last stitch before the stitch marker. Okay, now here's what's going to happen in this next stitch, and I'm going to just take that out here for a second. We are going to create a corner here, okay? So this is going to be the point of the arrow. So what we want to do is we want to insert 2 double crochets in here, 2 linked double crochets. So we're still going to insert our hook in through that front bar, pull up a loop, and into that stitch, we'll do our double crochet. Now we're going to do a second one, okay, into that same stitch. So again, I go in through that horizontal bar first, then I go right back into that same stitch and finish off the double crochet. So you can already see it's also helping us kind of come around the tip there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1 and do 2 more back into that same stitch again. So now since we've chained 1, that means we want to create a space in a corner. We are not going to insert into the bar. We're just going to do a regular double crochet here. Otherwise we wouldn't have the space we need. So there we go. Okay, so that is our corner, and if you want, you can place your stitch marker back in through that space. Some people might not, because now that you have that chain 1 space, it is identifiable, but I find these markers just make life easier. And so now we have to do 1 more back into that same stitch. So now we have a stitch to work with. So we're going to go in through that bar first, pull up, back into that same stitch, and there we have it. So there we've created our point. So you can see it's not quite pointed just yet, but it is on its way to being shaped into the point, okay? And so now you're just going to continue on doing your regular linked double crochet 1 into each stitch as usual. So it's just in these stitch markers where the point of our arrow is that we have to pay attention. So we've already done 1 corner here. Now you're going to just continue doing all of your 1 stitch into each all the way down here. Okay. And then once you hit this marker here, you are going to do the same thing we did down here. 2 linked double crochets, chain 1, 2 linked double crochets. Okay. And actually, once you get here, I'm going to meet up with you because that will be the end of round 2. And then we will take you through the beginning of round 3. Okay, I just have 1 more stitch left before I hit that stitch marker. And now we have the stitch marker. So this is the one where we're going to place 2 linked double crochets, a chain 1, and 2 more linked double crochets back into that same stitch. So as we did before, we go in through that horizontal bar, pull up a loop. Now we're going to go into that stitch and finish our double crochet as usual. Then do it again, back into that same stitch. Okay. Now we're going to chain 1 and do a regular double crochet back into that same stitch. Because remember, we want to create a space here. We're creating a corner. And just to make things easier, I'm going to replace that marker right in that chain 1 space. And now we're going to place 1 more linked double crochet back into that same space. So that stitch now has 4 stitches inside of it. So that's created our next corner here at the top. Okay. And now we're just coming up to the end of our round here. So we've got one more stitch here. So we'll just insert. And finish that linked double crochet. And now we've got our first linked double crochet of the round. So remember we did that chain 2, not really counting that as anything. So what some people will do when they're working the linked double crochet in the round like this, in order to join them together, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll actually go in through that bottom bar again. Then they'll go up through the bar of that first stitch, and they'll just simply slip stitch through everything to join. Okay, now I'm not a fan of this. I've tried it many different ways, and the reason being is because you are, if I can take that out, you're slip stitching in the center of the post of the stitch. So the top here kind of gets left wonky. Now you can slip stitch into the top as well, but I find that that just kind of leaves a little bit of a bump here, and I'm not a fan of it. So because of the way I started my very first linked double crochet with that chain 2 that I do not count as a stitch, it creates enough girth that when I come up to the end, I am simply just going to slip stitch to join at the top of the stitch, just like I normally would, and it snuggles in just beautifully right next to each other. So that is the way I join my rounds. So now with the color change, it's probably going to make it look like this is the point, but it is not. And so we've got our point here at the top, and then we've got our point here at the bottom. So now we have definite pointed ends. And because of the way this yarn changes colors, in the beginning it might seem a little off if you are using a self-striping yarn, because it draws the eye to think that's kind of a pointed corner. It is not. That's what this is. Okay, so now I'm going to take you into round 3, which will now really solidify the arrow shape of our motif, and the rest will be super easy. So to begin round 3, we will chain 2 again. And then you're going to go into that second chain from your hook into that first one at the bottom. You'll insert your hook, pull up a loop, and now right in that same stitch where you slip stitch, you're going to go back into there and pull up another loop. Okay, so you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, and pull through the second 2. So that chain 2 is not really counting as anything. It's just giving this first stitch a little bit of girth. And now we just continue on. You find the horizontal bar there, pull through, go into the next stitch, and you're just going to continue on like this as usual. 1 linked double crochet into each stitch. Now what you want to do is continue on. I love that texture it creates. See how you can see the horizontal bars? It just creates this really pretty design. So you're going to continue on as usual, and you're going to go until you're getting closer to your stitch marker up here. What I want you to do is when you have 3 stitches left before the stitch marker, I want you, so you're going to pause the video obviously and do all your crochets, your linked double crochets all the way up. When you have 3 stitches left, then unpause the video. I'm going to meet back up with you here to show you how to create the outside corner of your arrow. So remember, we've got the tip of the arrow is going to be here, and then we're going to have 2 more corners on the side. Okay, so we don't count the chain 1. So you're going to have 1, 2, 3. Once you get to getting ready to go into that stitch, meet me back here and I'll show you how to create that corner. Okay, so I've come up to this first point here and I have 3 stitches left. So now we're going to create our first pointed edge here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to begin as usual, go in through that front loop and create a linked double crochet in the next stitch. But then we're going to chain one and then go back into that very same stitch and place a double crochet. So this is creating our side point to our arrow. Okay, so in round 2, we were just creating the top points of our arrows, and now we're creating the side points. Okay, so that's the first side point. Now into the next 2, you will just do a regular linked double crochet. So there is one. Okay, and then there is the second one. And now we've come up to our top point here. At this point, if you want, you can get rid of your stitch markers, because once you finish round 3, that will have finished the shape, the established shape, and then it's easier to find. So now you can see there's a chain 2 space here. So into here, we're going to place one linked double crochet. Okay, so we're only doing one. Previously, we did 2 in that space, but from now on, we're always only placing 1. We're going to chain 2. So this is always going to be our top point. Then go back into that space and place a double crochet. Okay, so that's round 3. So you can see that that is the top point, and you've got your side point here. So now you can see the arrowhead is really starting to take shape. Now what you want to do when you come around the other side is place one linked double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Now remember, anytime you come out of a corner, make sure you don't miss that very first stitch coming out of there, because that belongs to that first post there. So a lot of times I'll push this aside. I'll go into that loop as before. And then I want to make sure I get this very first stitch here. And it's really important, because if you miss it, it will affect your stitch count. Okay, so that's one stitch coming out of the corner. And now I'm going to need to do the next one. So another linked double crochet into the very next stitch. And now here's the third stitch. And what I'm going to do here is the same thing we did in this side corner. We're going to place one linked double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. So always make sure you got to remember to link these together, because that is the design of this project. So there's the third stitch, chain 1, and then into that stitch there, back into the same stitch. There you go. So now you can really see there is the top of our arrow. And now you just continue on as you've been doing, placing one linked double crochet into each stitch all the way down until you get to the other end. And then we will be doing the same thing. Okay, so there you go. Now you can really see the shape. Whoops. You can really see the arrowhead taking shape. And this is it. So once you finish round 3, you will have formed the shape of your motif, and then the subsequent rounds will be very easy to find, because now you've got your chain spaces to work into. So you've got chain 1 on each side, and then you've got chain 2 at the tops of your arrows. So go ahead and finish this side all the way to the end here, and you're going to do the exact same thing. When you come down to your last 3 stitches, into this stitch here, third from the last, from the end, you're going to place one linked double crochet, chain 1, one linked double, you're going to place one linked double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet back into the same space. Then you will do a linked, and into the chain space here, you're going to place 1 linked double crochet, chain 2. So where you have your marker, it's a chain 2, and then go back in and do a double crochet. Remember not to miss this first stitch coming out, so you'll stitch the first and the second coming out of the corner with a linked double crochet, and into the third one, and see just at the end here, you're going to create that other little point. But I'm going to meet up with you when you get to here and talk about just kind of joining round 3 and setting you loose for doing subsequent rounds. Okay, so this is my third stitch from the point, and it just so happens it's right near the end. So I've done my linked double crochet, I've chained 1, and I'm going to go back in and place a double crochet back into that same spot. Okay, so now I've established the other end of my arrow, and this is where I'm going to slip stitch to join. And again, some people will connect their linked double crochets together at the bar. I am not going to, just because I don't like the way it bunches up. So I'm just going to simply, I'm ignoring that initial chain 2, and I'm just going into the top of the official stitch there. Okay, so I'm just going to go into the top of the official stitch, and I'm going to slip stitch to join. And it's sitting snugly like that. Now, because there is a color change, it's going to draw the eye to feel like, oh, that looks like there's a huge gap there. But once we continue with subsequent rounds, that will disappear. So really, your points are over here, and that is the other end of your arrow. So now we are good to go. 3 rounds is what it takes to establish the shape. And I just love the texture this stitch creates. It's just so lovely. Okay, so I've got my other point here. And now you're going to just continue on doing the same thing you've done. You'll chain your 2 and then create your linked double crochet and continue all the way. Now, anytime you come to a chain 1 space, you're simply going to place 1 linked double crochet, chain 1, 1 linked double crochet. Sorry, I keep saying that. It's linked double crochet, chain 1, regular double crochet into that space. And then remember, you always want to go into that very first stitch across the way. You're always creating a chain 2 at the top of your arrow and a chain 1 on the side, and then you continue around. So for the next 4 rounds, it's pretty straightforward. You just want to make sure you keep creating those 3 corners and points on both ends. So we've just finished round 3. You will now continue with this pattern for round 4, 5, 6, and 7. So in total, we're doing 7 rounds to create our arrow motif. Okay, so now the best thing to do, pause the video, maybe put on your favorite podcast or Netflix show, and finish the motif for the next 4 rounds. Okay, and that is it. So I will meet back up with you once you've finished your full arrow motif. Okay, so I've completed 7 rounds in total, including that initial spine round. And then all you have to do is you're going to do several more of these, okay? So you will need 11 of these in total if you're following along exactly the way I'm doing the alternating colors, where I've got the driftwood and then the sea salt color, the driftwood, the sea salt. If you decide to do it all one solid color, which will look really beautiful as well, and in fact, I'm going to put up a screenshot of the way it looks all in one color, I would recommend you doing 12. So just that way you have an even number of arrows, okay? So because I am alternating, I have 6 done in the driftwood color and 5 arrows done in the sea salt color. Okay, so that's just my darker contrast. I have 6 arrows. My lighter color, I have 5 arrows. Okay, so once you are done that, so now I probably won't see you for a little while because you'll be feverishly creating all of your arrows. Put on a good Netflix series and go to town. And when you have all of your arrows, come back and meet me and I will show you, and I'll take you through how we're going to construct our throw. Okay, so we will sew all the arrows together and then we will work on a border and we will be finished. So I will leave you there, guys, and I'll see you back in a little while. Okay, guys, so I have finished making all of my arrows. Okay, so I've got the sea salt color here done. So I've done 5 of these and 6 of the driftwood, as I've said. So now we're going to stitch all of our arrows together. Now I've started doing a few already. So just to show you how it's going to turn out. So I'm doing the contrasting colors. Again, if you've decided to go ahead and do all yours in one colorway, then that's okay too. But this is basically how it's coming out, and I am absolutely loving this, and I just love the little detailed edging here. And we're just putting this together with a very simple slip stitch method, okay? So what you want to do is make sure that you've got your right sides up. So you want to take 2 panels to start, have the right sides facing up, and then fold the arrows so that the wrong sides are facing outward. And then you're going to begin from here, and we're going to whip stitch it together. Now you can see where the stitch is here. Now I am using the sea salt color in order to do the whip stitches. And you can see it just blends in beautifully. And the method that we're using is we're just going to simply pick up the outside loops. So I'll just show you here. So this is my right side. And that's my right side facing in. So what you want to do is you want to get a length of yarn. I always double it with a little extra at the end, and I've been finding that double the length of this has worked just fine. So you're going to get a piece of yarn, double the length. And then what you want to do is you want to match up in your small corners here. Now what's really important to see is that's the chain 1, right? So the chain 1 corner. So what we're doing is we are picking up the outside loops. So that means in the panel that's closest to you, I'm picking up the loop that's closest to me. And then in the back panel, I'm going to pick up the loop that's furthest away. So these are the outside loops, which leaves the 2 inside loops facing each other. So I'll insert, bring it all the way through, and then I'll keep doing that all the way down. So I just match it stitch for stitch. So this is the outside here and the outside there. Okay, so see, that's the inside. And I just keep going. I just went from front to back. Some people like to go from back to front. And that's simply what I'm going to do. I'm not going to take you through it. You guys have seen me whip stitch enough things, hopefully. But that is what I'm going to do. Be careful not to stitch tightly because then it's going to bunch up your work. You just want to keep it snug but relaxed, if that makes sense. So I started not in the first full stitch, but in the chain 1. Okay, so the chain 1, because it's easiest to match up with the chain 1. So I'm just going through both loops just so you guys can see the chain 1. And then from here, I keep matching stitch by stitch by stitch by stitch. And it should take you beautifully down to the last chain 1 stitch on the end here. Now, it may happen, because it does happen, that you get close to the end and you go, uh-oh, I have one extra stitch on one panel than the other. Don't panic. If you get to your last 3 or 4 and you start seeing that's what's going to happen, what you do is you take one. So let's say this one has the extra stitches. I'll go through this one as usual. I'll go through the corresponding one. Okay. I'll go through and then I'll go into the next one here, but I'll go back into the same one I just did over there. And that just kind of basically crunches 2 into 1. It's very subtle, and then you just complete the others as usual. You want to try and do that a few stitches up and not right at the end, because I find it's a little bit more noticeable there. Okay, and that's it. And then you tie it off, weave in your end, and then you continue on. So this will take you a little while because, you know, you've got 12 6 and 5. So you'll have 11 of these arrows to sew together, okay? So it'll take you a little while. So I'm going to leave you to do that. And then once you have your throw complete and all of your arrows are attached, then we can talk about creating our border, and we're almost done. And I have finished sewing all of my arrows together, so my blanket looks something like this. Now it's quite large at this point. It's quite long, I should say. So it definitely has more length than it does width, which I'm fine with because it's really meant for either wrapping around your shoulders or covering your legs when you're sitting on your beach chair. So what we're going to do now is we are going to be doing a border. Now, there was a time when I really debated whether or not I was going to put on a border, because I actually don't mind it kind of left as is. I think it looks just as elegant and lovely without the border. But then I decided having that final border that will tie in the whole blanket is what I'm going for. And I'm going to use the sea salt color that I have left over. So I do have a bit left over of that color because each cake gave me exactly 3 arrows. So I know in my sea salt, I only used 2 out of that cake. So that's what we're going to do right now. So you just want to make sure, it's going to be a little bit awkward because it's quite long, and you want to make sure that you've got your right side facing up. So what I'm going to do is we are going to start right here in our first corner. So this is the long side here. Actually, I should say this is the short side where it's just got regular stitches to work into. So we're going to start here. This is my right side facing up. Now, how do I know that? Because I can see all these little linked bars going across the front. That's why it's called the linked double crochet. When I turn it on the back, it looks more like stitches, the bars that go across, right? So can you see that? So that just looks more like a stitch, like a sewn stitch. And this one you can tell is kind of woven in and carried one to the other. Okay, so we're going to start in this corner with our border. Okay, so you're going to begin by placing a slip knot on your hook. And then you want to find that first corner. So these are the short corners of your arrow. The chain 2s are your long corners, I call them. So you're going to begin in your short point. Remember, the chain 2 is your longer point. So, and I'm just going to insert my hook there and just slip stitch to join. So for my border, I'm only going to do 1 round all the way around this blanket because I think that's actually all I have left in yarn. Now you may decide to do 2 rounds or maybe even 3. The only thing is you've got to watch that it doesn't start to buckle because there'll be a lot of stitches going into this little dip area here. So just keep that in mind. So for me, I'm simply going to do 1 round all the way around with this double crochet stitch. So what I'm going to start you with now is I'm going to show you how to work your corners and then work your valleys here. So we've got a corner, a peak, and then a valley, right? And then it's peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. And then of course, once you come across to the straight edge, that's very straightforward. You're just simply going to place 1 stitch into each all the way around. Okay, so here we go. We're going to begin by chaining 1. And then we're going to go back into that same stitch and do a single crochet. Okay. From here, we're now going to find that first little leg here, and we're going to insert our hook, pull up a loop, and do another single crochet. So this creates what we call a standing, or what I call a solitary double crochet. So it gives us the height, but it's just a little bit thicker than that traditional chain 3. Okay. So I'm just going to do 1 there, and then I'm going to move on into my very first stitch. Now remember, anytime we have a corner here, we can't miss that stitch there. So you're simply just going to yarn over, insert your hook into that stitch, I'm going to work over that tail there. And you're just going to work a traditional double crochet. So we're no longer using a linked stitch. Now you can, but I am purposely not doing it because I do want to differentiate the look of the border compared to the rest of the stitches. Okay. And that's simply it. You're just going to place 1 double crochet into each stitch until you get up to that very first peak here. Okay. And I'll meet up with you there to talk you through that. Okay, so I have now come up to my very first peak here, and you can see now the difference, right? So that's the regular double crochets, and these are the linked double crochets. They're much more packed together, and the regular double crochet using this hook is making this a little bit more on the lacy side, which I like. Okay, now this time whenever we come to a peak, we are actually going to place 2 double crochets, chain 1 and 2 double crochets. So we had been doing the opposite before, but now what we're going to do is we're going to insert our hook and pull up a loop, do 1 double crochet, again back into that chain 2 space, 2 double crochets, chain 1 and 2 double crochets again, all into that same space. Okay, so you have something that looks like that. Just gives that point a little bit more of a finished look, okay? Okay, and now the rest is pretty easy again. You're going to do 1 double crochet. Again, remember, don't miss this one here. This is really important. Those corners get really tricky sometimes. So 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way down until we get to our first valley. Now what I want you to do is meet back up with me when you've got that last stitch before you come to the meet or the join where the 2 arrows come together, okay? So that'll be the last stitch there. Or, if it's easier, it's going to be the last stitch before you created your chain 1, okay? So I will meet you back here shortly. Okay, so here I am. I've come down to the other side. I do have 1 stitch left before the chain 1. I just wanted you guys to see what that is looking like. I really love that contrast against the driftwood colorway there. Okay, so I've got that 1 stitch left. I'm actually going to work right into it. I just wanted to give you guys a spot to meet up with here. And now you have your chain 1 in your short peak and your chain 1 in your short peak on your other arrow here. So we are going to stitch these 2 together. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to insert our hook into that space, the chain 1 space, and you're going to pull through 2 as if you're going to do your regular double crochet. But you're not going to resolve it. You're going to leave the 2 loops on your hook. You're now going to yarn over and you're going to go into the next chain 1 space. So now we're into our neighboring arrow here. We're going to insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2 as if we're going to start a double crochet there. Now we've got 3 loops on our hook and basically 2 double crochets that are unresolved. Now we're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through all 3 of those loops. And you should see that it kind of ties those 2 stitches in together, but it only leaves us with 1 stitch. This is what we call a decrease or stitching 2 together. And what that'll do is that'll keep the integrity of the dip, the point that's downward, it'll maintain the same shape. Now you would just continue on, and of course, remember, there's that stitch right there. Now at the end of the day, if you miss one of these, it's not going to be the end of the world, but you just want to get into a good habit of understanding all the stitches that are there and working into them properly. So that way your work will always be nice and even and consistent. So this is now pretty much it. I'm just working up a few here. So now I just work my way back up and I do the same thing. When I get to my top peak, 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. Then 1 into each stitch all the way down. Then when I come to my chain 1 spaces, I will stitch these 2 together. And that, my friends, is going to be your repeat all the way down your peaked side. And of course, then eventually you're going to come down to your straight side. And like I said before, it's 1 stitch into each. And then you'll meet on the other peaked side and you'll go on and on and on. So this will take you a little while. Definitely a good Netflix project. I always call these Netflix projects when you can put on your favorite show and just not really think too much about it and go to town. So I just wanted to show you here how it's coming out. I love this contrast, and then I love the way that it just bridges the sea salt color and brings it all together. So I'm very happy with that. Okay, guys, go ahead and do that, and then I will meet back up with you when you're getting ready to finish off that round. Okay, good luck, and I'll see you guys back here shortly. Okay, and I'm coming up to my very last stitch, and that's the corner we began in. So I'm just going to put one more stitch in there. Then I'm going to chain one for my corner, and then I'm going to chain one more because I've already snipped my yarn. And now I'm finished. So I chained one more and I snipped my yarn, so I'm going to sew it in right into the corner. So I'll show you guys what I mean by that. Okay. So this is the way I like to end most projects in the round. So when I sew it in, you could have just slip stitched to join here, but I like to use this invisible join, I like to call it. So I'm going to take my needle, my darning needle, and I'm just going to go in and under where I would have slip stitched. I'm just going to pass that through just like that. And where that chain one was that I did, I'm just going to take my needle and go in through the top there. And I'm just going to pass that through. And what that does is it actually makes it look like you just stitched along and kept going. So you can't really tell where the end or the beginning is. And this is what I love about using this type of sewing technique. Okay, just gentle. You don't want it to bunch too much. And then now I'm just going to kind of hide it back here. I'm going to sew it. Just going to find a loop under there. And pull it a little snug. And from the front, you can't really tell. And now I'm just going to finish weaving in this end a little bit more firmly. I like to pass it back and forth at least 3 times to lock it in. Okay, and again, be careful not to pull it too tight. And your beach throw is complete. And there you are. So you can see I've opted to leave it with one round with the border, and I'm very happy with that. I didn't want it to become oversaturated. And again, I'll pop up a picture here for those of you that want to do it all in one solid color. It looks just as beautiful. So there's that option as well. Now I am going to go ahead and do some tassels, and I'll show you what that looks like here. So I've gone ahead and done tassels on all of the driftwood colorway points. So that way you have the cream with the tassel. I left the cream point out and I've tasseled the colored one. Now I may still change my mind later and add tassels to all of them, but I was also gauging how much yarn I had left. So I had enough yarn left from one arrow, because I know each cake gave me 3 arrows. And in the sea salt color, I had only done 2 arrows. So I knew I had enough yarn. I just didn't know how much I had to do all the points. So I'm very happy with that. Now, if you're interested in how to make a tassel, I will leave a card up in the corner here on how to make a tassel. One of the ways you can make a tassel. I did that for the autumn wrap poncho, I believe. That was from 2019. And I'll also leave a link for that in the description box down below. So if you're going to put your tassels on, just click on that card there and follow along. I will leave a link for it as well if you want to click on it after this video. So guys, we finished our Loops and Arrows beach throw. Now this has been really, really fun, as all crochet projects are to me. But I hope you found it a little easier than you might have thought it was going to be. And I hope you are just as satisfied as I am with the end result. And so this will last me forever now. Anywhere I go, any house I move into, This throw is always going to come with me. I love the way the stitches snuggle right next to each other. It creates a lot of warmth. It creates such a pretty texture. And actually, you can do so many things with this stitch. Now, if you have any questions, as always, just pop me a comment in the comment box down below, or email me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. And actually, I really have loved getting those emails. There have been quite a few of you that have emailed me directly for particular questions. And some of you have had some requests, which I really like, because that helps me know what type of content to keep producing on this channel. Okay, guys, so as always, have a wonderful day. Happy crocheting. Take good care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next session. Take care.